Greg, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah. So, last time we spoke was, when we had just entered the lockdown phase. So, from then till now, what has changed? How has been the journey since then?
Sure, sure. So yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, no. So I think if you look at kind of in the April May timeframe specifically, obviously at that point there was a full lockdown in effect, right? So it was very challenging for kind of all mobility businesses just in the nature of it, because there was really no opportunity to kind of serve the normal use case. So I think really what we saw is a lot of mobility companies, Zoomcar included, kind of was looking at doing more of a sort of stopgap measure to see how you can best leverage the platform and use the fleet of vehicles for alternative use cases, namely around sort of essential services, et cetera, around sort of medicine, around grocery, food, et cetera. And so that lasted for about 2 months, and then kind of from mid-May onwards, when things started to gradually reopen, I think all of us started to kind of see normal business slowly come back. And I think depending on the exact subsector, it came at different cadences. But I think from our vantage point, at least, one thing that evolved, actually quite dramatically was around subscription. Subscription, I would say, for cars was one of the first to come back in a major way, and we actually resumed growth, by the end of May. And so at that point, we were already at kind of 2x, 3x the volume and scale that we were at pre-COVID. I think given the broader macro, having a personal private car certainly has a lot of relevance and continues and will continue to have a lot of relevance, considering cases are still so high. And I think that's on one part. The second part, in terms of the kind of the shorter term access product that we have for hourly daily, I think that was something which obviously was kind of a little bit more measured in coming back. That's still, for us at least, we've seen that kind of recover at least 50%, since the lockdown, and that's on an upward trajectory. So I think month on month that's growing, 20 to 30% back. So we expect, certainly before the end of next quarter, that would return back to 100%. So yeah, I think it's just a measured approach back, fully, at least from our standpoint.
Mm, okay, great,
Yeah.
fair point. Gaurav, I'll come to you. Same question. As you were mentioning that from a high peak you went down to zero, and then that the journey has started again. So, how has this ride been for you in the past like since April?
So yeah, so as Greg referred to, it's during the first lockdown one and lockdown two, which extended from 25th March all the way to early May. Things were all sort of to a standstill, and that is for most of the travel and mobility businesses. In fact, and so was the case even for Savaari, where our revenue almost sort of became zero in April. And of course, from lockdown 3 and 4, they started slowly opening it up, where of course they had some classification into of zones of cities that red zone you have to travel with e-pass, orange and green you can travel. Interestingly, all the major cities of significance were actually in the red zone. So of course from there on, and of course we try to structure more and understand better the fact that you were required to actually sort of get e-passes. It was not it was not very organized, very structured, and we had to find a way to help customers travel. And of course, from if you look at Unlock One, which started from 1st of June, they said that now at least for within city travel and within state travel, things are open and no state has to restrict the movement. But it's only say July end, after 2 months of doing that we actually saw travel becoming free within state and within city. And then, of course, from Unlock 2, which is 1st July, they have opened the entire travel, including for interstate, that you don't require any pass and other things. And it's now that we are seeing August end that most states have actually taken up the requirement of you requiring an e-pass, and it's a free flow. It used to be pre-COVID. So of course, now our numbers are slowly coming back. We are already seeing the result of travel being free in September, where we by the end of September we expect that we will recover to 75% of pre-COVID levels. We did around 60%. We recovered up to 60% in August, and now we are looking at 70% recovery, which is what we have. And of course, on the way there have been quite a few challenges. that we can get into.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. It's a very unique situation that I think we are in right now. So people want people want personal vehicles compared with public transport. I would believe for safety reasons, but again, with jobs, salary cuts, GDP shrinking 24%, things being uncertain, not everyone will be in a position to make a new purchase. So, does that make this car rental service very attractive at this point in time? Mitesh, what would you say?
Sorry, am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Please go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Saurabh. Uh, so I think let's take a step back. Let's where we were before the pandemic kind of broke out in towards the end of February, March, mid March particularly. I think the sector was definitely doing very well, as my friends Greg and Gaurav just kind of described. Now let's look at human behavior. The way pandemic has struck, obviously nobody can say anything. It was an external crisis which nobody could have controlled. So I think 3-4 months, the entire thing was around getting back to normalized level, and that's what now we are slowly proceeding to. Today, as a normal consumer, if I see things around me, I think to a greater extent, people are trying to come back to life. You see some amount of traffic on road, people stepping out, unlocking is happening across phases, across cities, and travel is going to be the requirement, right? Now, coming to travel, does pandemic mean that everybody will travel only by their own car? If you have a vehicle, obviously, yes, people will prefer to travel by their own car or two-wheeler and all. Does it mean that people will start buying car left, right, and center and completely dump public transport? Answer is a big no. I stay in Mumbai and I see best buses around me. Still very crowded. Though they try and avoid traffic and all, but it is still very crowded in the morning times and all. So point is, I think life is coming back to normalcy slowly, and there is nothing like post COVID. I believe this will be a situation of life with COVID, and will have to adopt to that, where we learn to live trying to protect ourselves and at the same time getting back to our jobs and businesses. uh, Mobility is one such thing that we have all observed. I mean, come March, come April, everything was at zero. Today I'm sure all of us, we have looked at this sector very closely. We recently invested into Blue Smart, which is a electric vehicle mobility platform. They are currently growing weekly 25% week on week, right? Because uh, you know uh, focusing on Delhi NCR market, people are increasingly booking it. The airport bookings are coming back, the intra-city bookings are coming back, and slowly people are taking public transport route as well, as long as the safety is ensured. So I think the key point over here is for the players to ensure that whenever they are onboarding a passenger, in his mind, he is given that comfort that, look, this is a compliant ride, and there are no safety hazards on this ride, be that by way of providing a sanitizer or hygienic environment in the car and all. And there are a lot of steps that all the players are taking, which is kind of reassuring the faith in mobility, and ultimately traffic is going to come back. That's what we are seeing in last 3 months. Hopefully, my estimation is that by November or December we should be back to pre-COVID level.
Okay. That's very optimistic. Would hope we get there. Greg, Gaurav, I'll come to you. So, Greg, you have a self-driven car model. Gaurav, you have a chauffeur-driven car model. So, in both, I mean, safety being the main concern. So, what has been some of the demands that you have, or feedback that you have got from users, especially in terms of safety, that they would want to see, or how have you taken care of that particular problem? Greg, if I can start with you.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think we were very proactive there, sort of really leaning in, and I think we wanted to obviously not wait to kind of hear sort of retrospectively from customers. We wanted to start when we reopened the operations effectively from May. We were leaning into it and following international best practices around sanitization, around the hygiene in terms of how best to sanitize a vehicle. So we created all these videos, and sort of standard SOPs around how we train people and how they should be sanitizing, and then we kind of showcase that to our customers to kind of build that transparency and trust. Obviously, kind of changing some of the back-end operations, some of those modalities to kind of accommodate this in a very holistic way. And so, of course, talking to your customers, on different social channels and different CRM channels to let them know and intimate to them about how you're really handling that, to give them that reassurance and confidence and broader peace of mind. So I think that was there from our vantage point. And I think from the subscription side of things, what often we would do is in fact just to kind of build it to the next level, we would kind of do like an on-spot sanitization, so kind of like sanitizing and on demand, so to speak. So once the sort of delivery of the vehicle actually reached them, because in subscription, right, you're looking at something which is anywhere from 1 month all the way to 36 months. So it's not a short transaction. It's not a small transaction. So I think you want to have a little bit more bespoke, a little bit more sort of high touch sort of engagement. On the rental side, obviously, for short-term access, you don't need to do that in the same way. So you can kind of do it asynchronously and have a different sort of product experience. But I think the whole point is, it was really important that we were very proactive, leaning in. And then, I think once we were able to do that, I think, to be honest, no, we never received any feedback from customers that saying that they wanted us to do more, or that they didn't somehow trust it. So I think we wanted to really, really take the proactive lead on that front.
Okay. Gaurav, how has been, because your model is a little different from what Greg operates in. So, how has been, like, what feedback have you got? And obviously, you would have taken a lot of measures to ensure that, people are aware that safety is taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, before we started, we actually looked at it very carefully as to, what are the precautions that we must take that can ensure that the ride, both for the driver and customer, is as safe as it can be possible. And the other thing that we wanted to keep in mind was the fact that we don't want to put any more financial burden on the driver partner that we have. At the same time, keep the prices sort of pretty much the same level, to the same level that were pre-COVID, so that your customer is not unnecessarily paying uh, to travel. So, and that's where the things that we have done is, one is all our cars are sanitized every day, and they are aired after every trip. And each car has a sanitizer, which both the customer and the driver are free to use. The second is, for the driver, we have made it mandatory that he has to wear mask at all times, and that we are recommending and encouraging all drivers to actually sanitize their hands as often as they can, and in fact wash their hands wherever it's possible. And we understand the drivers are also taking quite a risk by driving in these times, and that's why what we have done is we have worked with a third party and got them COVID insurance, which is very, very economically priced, so that at least in case things were to actually go bad for them, they have some kind of a sort of financial backing with them. So that we have done. Other thing that we have taken a line is that, and this is a belief that if we have to keep COVID at bay, customers are equally responsible, and they have an equally important part to play. And that's why what we have done is we have it's mandatory even for the customers to wear masks, and we strongly encourage them to carry their own COVID kit, which has a sort of a sanitizer, as well as a linen or a bed sheet that they can put it in the back seat. And what that ensures is the fact that the back seat of the car is as hygienic as their own home. And that has really worked out well, in the sense of ensuring that it happens on every ride. So I as a company, especially in our model where we work with driver partners, claim a lot of things, but at the end what matters is finally what the customer is getting. So we wanted to keep things very, very simple. And you can see all these measures do not cost much to the driver, and whatever is the impact, little impact, that is absorbed by us. And the biggest proof of this is that we very aggressively sort of monitor our net promoter score, and that is shot up to 65, and it's very, very high for a car rental company to have such a high thing. And which proves 2 points. One, that customers really appreciate the fact that we are helping them travel in these times, and the second, certainly, that they feel secure that their travel is safe with us. So per se, from the feedback, of course, apart from monitoring that what we are saying is being delivered, there's not much that we have heard. And in general, we see, as I mentioned, our the NPS of 65, mid 60s, is actually higher than what we used to record pre-COVID, and that's amazing. That's very encouraging for us.
Okay. Okay. Good. Okay, so you said that you have absorbed kind of the cost of the safety precautions that have to be taken so that neither the driver or the passenger is affected due to the cost. So, is that pinching you? Is it okay for you to take it for now, or do you think you'll be able to continue it for a while?
So as I mentioned, the costs are fairly insignificant. So it's not pinching us at all, and we'll continue to continue with it for as long as it's needed to be continued.
Hmm, hmm, okay, okay. So, what I observed during the entire like starting April till now, eventually a lot of rental players, started pivoting to maybe catering to logistics, towards logistics, maybe, or started long-term rentals or things like that. So, Greg, what do you think? This is a temporary phenomena, or this is going to be a sticky thing which will be there for some time now?
Sure. Yeah. So I think logistics, I mean, I can't comment for everyone, but I think at least in our standpoint, if you think about Zoomcar, logistics was definitely more of a stopgap measure because, at that point for those 2 months, I mean, nothing else was allowed, in practically speaking.
Hmm,
So I think,
hmm,
if you have, an asset, if you have access to vehicles, then naturally you want to see how best you can leverage those. So that piece of it was definitely more stopgap. I mean, I don't really foresee many mobility players staying in the logistics space because one, it's not core to what we do. Secondly, the margins are a very different profile. It's definitely not as profitable. So I think that would probably not be particularly much at the forefront. So if anything, it would be like a very small component for folks going ahead. Having said that, you think about the second aspect of what you just articulated, the longer term stuff. So yeah, anything on the longer term side, I think that is a much more either permanent or semi-permanent fixture going forward. For the simple reason that as I kind of kicked off at the top, is that really the overall sort of mobility tailwinds are very much there for having a private sort of vehicle solution. And so when you have like a longer term rental, I mean, that's just very by its nature is going to be more personal. It's going to be more intimate. Something that people are going to have that clarity, that peace of mind, that comfort around it. And let's be honest, I mean, COVID's not going anywhere for the next 6 months at least. It's probably going to be with us for the next 12 to 18 months. So yeah, I think given that reality, definitely the psychology around that sort of broader fear and that desire for comfort and peace of mind is going to be there. And so that's where I do feel that, at least over the next medium term, at the very least, you will see this trend around longer term rental, et cetera, remain.
hmm, okay.
Yeah.
Nitish, what's your opinion on the long-term rentals? Do you think this is something that is going to stay there, or it's just a temporary thing?
No, I think Greg and Gaurav both made some very interesting points, and they are the one who are on the driver's seat, so nobody better than them to kind of give clarity on this. But again, I will wear the hat of an investor and head of a consumer, and definitely I see these are the areas where there is a lot of scope. There is a huge scope, and I say this, if I take into account my stint at Ola as well when I was CFO there, these are the categories which are really expanding a lot. I think consumer in this category, while it's price sensitive, but if you're providing quality service, quality experience, where in the current time all the more reason, if his concerns around hygiene and safety are taken care of, I think it's a phenomenal space to be in. And definitely the economics work out well, not only for the platform but also for the driver, and also for the consumer. Talking about Blue Smart, our recent investment, they are into electric vehicle space. I think unit economics are working out really well. The initial capex might be a little high, but there is some subsidy there also. Again, government is promoting EV. From the driver's perspective, it really makes sense in terms of lower cost of operation, lower cost of flying. From the consumer perspective, while Blue Smart has taken some amazing steps to ensure safety and hygiene, they are rated 4.9 now on the App Store, which is very good in the current times and all. I think EV is the way to go forward in terms of your responsibility towards the environment as well, where you are ensuring safety not only for the one who are in the cab and taking the ride, but also for the external environment. And I think EV going forward in next 3 to 5 years is definitely going to be something which will find not only a lot of support from government in terms of government policies, but also private sector. We have seen a lot of large companies also getting into this area, and I think the push will only keep getting stronger. So overall speaking, at an holistic level, like I said, when I wear the head of an investor or a consumer, I'm pretty excited about overall car rental or intra-city, intercity mobility platform. Definitely have a long way to go over here.
So, obviously you talked about EV, so I'll come to you, Gaurav, Greg, both of you. You know, I was mentioning earlier also that as more and more people, due to safety reasons, move towards, car rentals, obviously for safety reasons, and, shun public transport, maybe trains are not available either. There is a lot of environmental cost to it when, more cars get onto roads. So, do you think that in your kind of business you would be able to integrate EVs, or do you have plans also? Obviously, there are challenges. Charging is one of them. The charging infrastructure, because for at least for long distances, that's not very much possible. Even for shorter distances, the time that it takes to charge a car means that there is an opportunity cost going on. So, what's your view, Gaurav?
So actually, of course, if you look at it, we are one of the industries which is burning the largest amount of fossil fuels, and that's not good. So we certainly follow EV developments, and we are following, and since day one, actually, since even Tesla came onto the map, we've been following very closely the EV developments that are happening. But at least at this time, especially where a company like Savaari, where primarily the focus is on the intercity travel, which is generally longer distance. It is actually not to the level that it becomes business viable to have EVs in our fleet. And of course, there are two aspects that have to happen before it becomes really a viable business for us. One is certainly the range has to increase to much more. And the thing, I mean, probably 300, at least 300 kilometers to begin with. And the second thing is that the prices have to come down. I mean, currently something which is being offered for 300 kilometers is coming at 25, 30 lakhs, which is certainly not viable for our business. So our policy is, we are keeping a close watch on this, and we'll wait for it to happen. And of course, by that time, I'm assuming that the infrastructure will be much more robust than what it is. But so far, it doesn't look like a very viable solution for us.
But as Mitesh was mentioning, Gaurav, there are some states, at least like Delhi is there, Karnataka, I know of, Maharashtra, I know of, that they are giving. I don't know if that much of discount or that much of comfort is good enough to make business sense for you. But there are states. So would, would we see that in certain routes you would have those EVs coming in earlier, and then maybe as more states start doling out benefits, then you would do that.
So at least the biggest constraint would be, the range has to be 300-kilometer odd.
Yeah. Mm.
Then only it becomes viable that, even for example, for a route like Mumbai Pune, if I were to do, I need at least 300 kilometers
Mm.
to be able to do that, back and
Right.
forth.
Right.
And in Bangalore, Mysore is still the same story. So that's where I think that will be our benchmark. And of course, prices probably can be worked out, because you could argue that, over 5 years, it'll actually make, I mean, the diesel cost that you'll save will more than make up for the upfront cost that you pay. But I think
Mm.
the range is the biggest issue for us as of
Okay.
now.
Okay. Greg, your thoughts? Greg, your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I mean, it's definitely the way I see it is it's more use case driven. So I think as Gaurav was saying, I think when you look at intercity, it's going to be a bit of a challenge for the next 2 3 years. But if you really think about it fundamentally from intracity, and you think about these shorter trips, and that's I think what Mitesh was alluding to as well earlier with Blue Smart. But I think for Zoomcar as well, we see it actually working quite nicely for those trips where you're going to use it for a couple of hours, and you're going to take it for say 30 40 50 kilometers. I think for those type of trips it actually plays well already today, and so we have very strong downstream partnerships with some of the leading charging players, and so we have a number of DC charging posts that we have access to across the top tier 1 tier 2 metros. So we actually were one of the early pioneers on the EV side, where we have over 500 electric cars the platform today. And now, since we're a very asset light model with our Zoomcar mobility services and our marketplace for white labeling, we work with all of the leading OEMs on the electrification side, for subscription. And so thinking about the new EV products that are out there, and getting those out into the hands of the consumer through subscription. So which is why I said use case is important here, because in that context, you're talking, people, most people who are subscribing to an EV, this is not their first car, right? So it's usually their second or third car. And so for them, having a, sort of a second or third car, where they can actually share back the car for some of the time, it becomes actually pretty economically viable for them. And so that's where it becomes quite compelling and very interesting from an economics point of view. So even though you might have a 15, 20, 25 lakh car, you're effectively, paying for something which is maybe like a 10 lakh car. And so then it becomes, pretty exciting for people. And so I think we found that, those use cases, those are working today for electric vehicles. And, I think as the range naturally goes up and, as the price points naturally come down, you will see that consistently tick up, every quarter going forward.
Mm, okay. Okay. Before I go to the next question, I'll again request our attendees to keep the questions coming. We'll take it up in another 10 minutes, maybe. So, Greg, staying with you again. So, you said that use cases has to be there. So, you recently have partnered with, the likes of LG and all. And and do you have more plans to, do that? And if you do that, would you be diversifying into the EV space or looking at more? Because these guys will have the kind of in their minds also they know that EVs are the way forward to for go ahead. So have you had any discussions like that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think definitely it's something which will be, as I said a minute ago, I think it will be a more calibrated approach. So I think we have to all remember that, as an OEM, these guys have just a massive cost base, and there's just so much investment that goes on for a new product. And so the reality is that, I mean, apart from Tesla, there are very few pure play electric car companies out there today, right? Very,
Mm,
very few. And of course, really none in India on the electric car side. So they're all sort of legacy OEMs where it's all about balancing and so prioritizing across a lot of sort of resources where they have existing vehicle platforms, et cetera. So it is something which will take its time to evolve. And I think given the fact that the government policy has been now trending in a positive direction, but it hasn't always been as sort of clear for a lot of these OEMs on kind of what that policy will ultimately look like. So there's not as much sort of long-term policy visibility. I think it's been fairly short-term in nature. So as a result of it, the investments have been a little bit sort of stop-start here in the Indian automotive ecosystem for EV, and then same thing goes on the charging side. So I do feel it will be something that will gradually take its time, but I think again for our subscription program we are working with all of the major OEMs because I can just I can confidently say that at least from our vantage point, I think all of the top 10 OEMs are moving clearly in this direction. Some with more vigor, some faster than others, but I think we want to be a part of that with all of them. And so as we said, subscription as a use case for electric makes a lot of sense. So we do want to be front and center over the next few quarters as that comes more and more into the fold.
mm, okay, correct. Mitesh, I'll come to you. You invested in a EV cab hailing thing, and you just heard Gaurav and Greg that they have their own reasons why they think that EV still now doesn't make sense. But you made an investment. Uh, what were your thoughts then, and how do you see the things panning out?
Sure, and I think very, very valid reasons as pointed out by both Greg and Gaurav. Uh, what we need as an ecosystem is a resolution on the charging infrastructure. Guess that's where the next level of investment efforts, resources, and obviously capital as well. Besides, now you find a host of other private companies also who are getting into charging infrastructure projects, right? Because going forward, like I said, it's not only vehicle driven or it's not only mobility driven. I think charging infrastructure will have to be built to make sure, like Gaurav mentioned, if the range it will be only 300 kilometers, then it will restrict a lot of use cases. Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore, Mysore. These are very, very ideal examples. But if we have a proper charging infrastructure over there, then I think some of these use cases can be easily taken care of. So I see personally a lot of investment now going into charging infrastructure companies as well. We ourselves at IPV are looking at some of these very, very closely, and we believe that it's the story along with the EV vehicle or mobility platform. Charging infrastructure providers will also be a story for next 2 to 4 years. It's the space to watch out for.
No, but then Greg had said that it cannot be. I don't know if it's possible for startups to do it on their own or companies to do it on their. There has to be state intervention. There has to be a long-term clarity in vision, which Greg was and Gaurav also kind of touched upon. So is that not something that you would really want to happen? Like a government infrastructure push to the infrastructure. I know some of the highways that are going to be built will have those new setups, but not everywhere you have that. So even if I buy an electric vehicle car, I'm concerned about the environment. I need to go somewhere. I need to really ensure that I have those places where I get or maybe swap if you can, if there is a battery swapping facility. But these are long way ahead. So how do you see it, like future backwards or present forward? How would you see that?
I believe government definitely uh, there'll be a lot more that we currently desire, and there is a lot more that they can deliver. But it will have to be a public-private partnership sort of a project. We have seen that on the two-wheeler side as well, right? We have seen players like Bounce and Volvo and Ether, Ola itself now, planning to ramp up the two-wheeler space as well. So along with two-wheeler, four-wheeler, I think we will see a complete ecosystem shift over here, where it will but private players will have to take a lot of responsibility for this. We've seen Mahindra investing into a lot of these infrastructure, and so has Bajaj. So some of these larger players as well as some of these smaller startups eventually will grow up. I mean, look at ourselves back 10 years. We were a very nascent startup ecosystem, right? Look at our health tech or look at our edutech initiatives. The way they have picked up in last 5 years, to be specific, is just phenomenal. Now, did all of this come from government? No. I think a lot of private players also invested with the capital help from the foreign players, and today we have created that ecosystem. So I believe along with government, private players will definitely take up that metal to drive this forward. I would not really worry about government policies over here.
Different ways to look at same things. Okay, so attendees, keep your questions coming. We'll just have one more question from Gaurav and Greg, and then we'll come to your question. So Gaurav, Greg, the festive season is approaching. It's a nice, usually this is the time when companies really get excited about selling products, and people because they want to spend. What's your expectation from the upcoming festive season? Gaurav, I can start with you.
Yeah, so I'll just give a brief context to it, and that I think is the I mean it's for the entire good of the car rental industry, and that is I know you guys briefly touched upon that there are a lot of pivots happening when whether they're temporary or sort of long term. So one of the things that we also did it at Savaari, which is we start not that it was a pivot, we were doing it, but we started sharply focusing, and that is on one way intercity drops, and the reason were for example when we looked at why people were traveling, and still to this day it applies to a large extent that people are traveling to actually for their essential travel even till today. Of course, there are some green shoots of leisure travel that is happening, but it's primarily essential travel, and where they either are going to their natives or in some cases they're coming back to the city where they work. And then you sort of you add to it the fact that if you look at the trains, less than 2% of the trains are running currently. So there's hardly any way that you can do intercity travel through trains, and the same is the issue with buses, where who would invest for a quarterly or annual pass when you don't know how many passengers are going to fly with you, and pretty sort of the if you look at it, the even for example. Uh, uh, the fact that as far as COVID safety is concerned, both these airports, sort of train station, and bus depots, there you are actually the probability that you bump into a lot of strangers is much higher. even at the start of the trip or end of the trip or actually during the trip. That's where we sort of looked at that there was a lot of demand that was happening for people to travel from one city to another city, and that we started sharply focusing on, and we've seen that we have been able to actually, with the sharp focus that we had, we have been able to expand the coverage to 15 lakh plus routes on a pan India basis. So no matter which two cities you pick, there's a great probability that we'll be able to provide you sort of an opportunity to book a trip and actually carry on with your travel. And what this has really, really helped us is the fact that we are seeing that, we've been growing week on week as far as one ways are concerned since we started back in May. And the other fact is that, currently as we stand, we are 800% of what we did the highest pre-COVID. So that is very, very interesting for us. And the fact that, it is the primary contributor for us to actually do sort of 75% recovery, as I mentioned earlier, by September end. And keeping in line this, so what we are also seeing is that, as far as the October, November traffic is concerned, where people do travel sort of, during festivals, either they do a leisure travel or actually they go back to their natives. So we're seeing quite some interest, and our expectation is that, we'll be able to see 300% of the demand that we are currently seeing, primarily driven by one ways. And the most interesting part is that it's not just short term thing, which is just valid for these COVID times. But if you look at it, I mean, we did a survey and we figured that almost all people that travel through train, AC train, do not consider car rentals as in their consideration set or as an alternate that they can use. And that is what sort of we see the bigger opportunity for one-way intercity drops for car rentals, is that you become a credible alternate to train travel, and that opens up a large industry and a large sort of revenue opportunity for all the car rental players. And that's what sort of we have lapped onto it. And I of course hear that there are other folks that are doing it, and it's a great opportunity for us.
But that would be true for, say, Bombay, Mumbai, Pune, or Bangalore, Mysore. It won't be like a Kolkata to for Mumbai, maybe, or Kolkata to Bangalore, I would believe, right?
So
Or am I
absolutely.
wrong?
Yeah, you're bang on. So though we have done trips, all the way from Chennai to Calcutta, folks have gone because of these times. But you're right. So where the sweet spot is actually for any travel that can happen within 6 to 8 hours, because any travel that can happen within 6 to 8 hours, car rental is the fastest. So it's even faster than air, for the simple reason that even for air, you have to go to the airport, you have to wait in line, you have to check out. So entire time, if you look at it, this one-way intercity drop is the fastest. So anywhere, any trip which requires a travel time which is less than 6 to 8 hours, which includes Mumbai, is of course 4.5 hours. But there's so many other sort of routes which are very high volume for intercity, and can be a very, very credible alternate to trains.
Fair point, fair point. Greg, what's your expectation for the coming festive season? How do you see it? Have you done any surveys? Have you taken any stock of what your demand is going to be?
Yeah, I know. So I mean, historically, we've always seen a massive spike around this time, and so we started seeing it already. In fact, in the second half of August, from kind of Independence Day onward, when you kind of naturally started to see some festivals coming in the West and some in the South. So yeah, we'll see that sort of steady run up where you typically see organically at least a 2x jump, just from the organic pull of festive times. This year, I expect it to be a little bit more, so probably a 4 to 5x jump, just given the fact that you're coming from a slightly lower base that was more subdued, and particularly in North, now that it's starting to pick up there aggressively as well. So yeah, I think also what we're seeing is that people where earlier you might have been more of like a homebody where you say, okay, I'm going to stay home for Dussehra or stay at home for Diwali. This year you might actually see people trying to visit via car, visit family, friends, just because they've been tied down for so long. And so a lot of people felt like they were deprived of their summer, they were deprived of traveling during the early parts of the monsoon. So I think that's where we're seeing also an additional sort of pent up demand, so to speak, as well.
So sort of a vengeance travel, would you say, is that going to happen post? We are allowed to move around. I'm sure people are reaching to work. So we'll take some questions that have been asked to us. So first, if you can give the audio to Mitesh Rathod. Mitesh has a question. Mitesh Rathod. Yeah, Nitesh, go ahead with your question. Nitesh, you'll have to unmute and ask your question.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hi.
Nitesh.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
To everyone, my question is that after the lockdown, the prices of the self-drive cars have increased. That is what I've been noticing. So I wanted to know like what are the primary factors that have been contributed for this sudden surge, and how did the consumer behavior or the pattern has changed during this shift?
Okay. Okay. Greg, I think you would want to answer that.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, yeah, again, I can't speak for everyone here, but within self-drive, but as we think about it, our perspective is that price is generally a function of supply and demand, and I think we have been, at least in the last couple months, we've been more supply constrained than demand constrained in a lot of these setups. So I think as a result, I think pricing generally sort of modulates accordingly. Having said that, at least from our vantage point, what we've done is we've also introduced a couple of new products, such as a sort of a 2-week rental product, which is kind of like, we call it a commute product. It can be used for anything, not just commuting, but obviously commuting in the traditional sense is not as relevant. But this is a use case where you can travel for shorter distances per se, but you have access to that car for longer periods of time. So from a price point standpoint, it becomes a lot more economical. So at the same time, we've introduced products that are actually far more economical as well. So also introducing a point-to-point product, which competes against traditional taxis, which is like 35-40% cheaper. So we've done that as well. So I think it really, again, it depends on the use case per se. So if you look at even subscription, we've been able to keep subscription pricing, relatively stable and constant. So I think it really depends on, which of these 4 or 5 use cases you're really referring to. But yeah, I think generally speaking, it's going to be driven from demand, and supply in a lot of these use cases remains constrained.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Next question I think we have from Sohini. Sohini has a question. Can we give the audio to Sohini, please?
Hello.
Yes, Sohini, go ahead.
Uh, so my question is actually, so when the lockdown was initiated, obviously everyone had a sudden, it was like a sudden surprise altogether. So that was itself a very big obstacle. So how did that sudden jolt, I'm pretty sure it must have moved, it has obviously moved every business. So what was the first step that you took uh, in terms of overcoming that challenge?
I think we have pretty much answered that question, but still, Gaurav, I would want to, if you can add to what we have discussed already.
So actually, it's certainly a jolt, and that there are even bigger sort of things or challenges that are on your way. And so what we did was, of course, take stock of the situation and then sort of try to predict as best as you can, how the future is going to shape out, and then sort of do things that position you very appropriately for things that you anticipate will come going forward. So of course, for I think any businesses and any business, and I think most businesses have handled, the first thing that everyone has done is to actually take care of the worst case scenario, so that they can
Yes.
ride through and come out at the end of the tunnel, so that you can sustain through. And we did the same thing, that we have taken wherever the cost can be cut, and we have cut the cost, and we are ensuring that we have enough buffers that see us through the end of the tunnel. That is one. The second thing is certainly, as I mentioned about one ways, is looking at opportunities and being able to predict what the customer traffic is going to be, what the customer demand is going to be, and be prepared for that. And that in our case has worked out very well, that we could anticipate that there's a huge demand for that, and then we could leverage on that. So that is another thing. And another thing that you'll find common between most businesses, and especially in travel and mobility, that a lot of folks have been sort of making changes to their platform, ramping up their platform, so that maybe there were things that got left out in their day-to-day firefighting, but now they had the opportunity to revamp it, to make it better, of all the things
Right.
that we could do. And we did pretty much the same 3 things.
But on the first day when you heard about the lockdown, were you worried? Like, were you?
Actually, to be honest, if you look at Bangalore, from 15th onward, we had also started doing these, work from home. So when it was even the Sunday curfew was announced, I think 21st or 20th, we knew things are bad. And China was an example. US was just getting into it. Italy was facing the music. So I think it was not very sort of unexpected. To tell you the truth, of course, everyone was hoping that it'll just pass by India and India won't get affected by COVID, but unfortunately that was not the case. So it was, of course, it was something that everyone could see, at least right from middle March. So we were prepared for it. I'm sorry it wasn't as surprising as one would want it to be.
Okay, fair point. So, we have, it's more of a suggestion than a question we've got on our Facebook. He said that Akhilesh Rao Yadav, he says that, I would like to, if we can make a small video the moment customer enter in the car. We can send the link to his or mobile. Video should include safety measures and reliable services, some do's and don'ts. So basically, when a person books uh, the moment they book a cab, instantly you can send a video to the customer and tell them about the safety measures and do's and don'ts. Uh, I mean, fair idea. What would you say, Mitesh?
No, I guess definitely some of these steps. See, there are emotions are playing out very loud right now.
Right.
Some of these steps might not be practical also. But yes, I believe what kind of helps is giving the customer the faith and actually delivering on it, right? Not just for the sake of doing a PR or a marketing gimmick. As long as you are able to assure that there is safety completely ensured, and your ride is as risk free as traveling in your own vehicle, I think that should probably be the clincher or giving entire new fillip to the industry. That's what we need to ensure. I'm not sure if shooting a video or other things can be really practical and can be kind of propagated at scale, and hence won't like to comment on this.
That's no problem. So next question we can take from Vivek Sidhu. If he's there, we can give the audio to Vivek. I don't know if Vivek is there. I'll just read out his questions. Uh, what's your view on international travel? Obviously, I mean that's something else. But does it have an impact on car rental industry? Uh, I don't know how big that chunk is, but Gaurav, Craig, you want to take that?
So certainly, actually, if you look at the sort of the December peak that most businesses see, at least as far as car rentals is concerned, is because of this inbound traveler that comes to visit India, and it starts all the way from October and goes at least till mid Jan, which is a fairly good time for people from outside to visit India. So we expect that certainly would get impacted, but per se. Ours, at least as far as Savaari is concerned, our business is fairly sort of majorly driven by domestic traveler. And so hopefully the restriction that international travel, the restrictions that are there on international travel probably will work for benefit of us that, now the traveler who was going to go visit other countries will actually be sort of probably visiting India more, different places. So that way, it should help get us demand and probably should nullify the sort of the impact of people not coming from outside to India.
Greg, do you see international travelers taking self-driven cars in India? I don't know how much would be that percentage.
Yeah, so actually in our space, international travel is not really relevant here because you need to have an Indian
Yeah.
citizenship and license. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all right. We'll just take one more question before we wrap up from Ankita. Ankita, is she there? Yeah, Ankita, go ahead, ask your question, please.
Hi. So, actually, I want to ask, like, how is the job in the sector will look post-COVID? Like, as we know, during this pandemic, a lot of people have lost their jobs. So, you think, is there going to be any kind of increase in the employment in the sector?
If I were to take it, I would say not in the near term. I don't see that happening near term, but certainly, as Greg was also saying, even we expected Savaari that we would have recovered 100% by December. And then, of course, from Jan onward, it should be fairly back to what normally we were doing. And that would mean that there should be job opportunities with us and as well as with the sector in general.
Yeah. Greg, what about you?
Yeah, I would definitely agree, echo Gaurav's sentiments there. I think I can speak specifically for Zoomcar. I think especially since we're also now, a good chunk of our business is SaaS. And so as a SaaS product, ultimately you need to make significant investments in technology, in product, in data science. And so those core pillars really for any consumer internet company and any, sort of business to business SaaS company are going to always be there. So I think as we reach that 100% and we continue pushing ahead with growth, those pillars especially will be major areas of hiring over the next few quarters.
Okay. Okay. So we just have one. I think we can take one more question. We have a couple of minutes to go. Can we have Jay to ask this question, please? Jay Krishani. Jay, do you have a question, or I should move ahead?
Right?
Okay. I think we don't have Jay there. So great talking to everyone. So just before we just kind of wrap it up. So Mitesh, I would want to know from you, Gaurav, or Greg, as a parting thought, where do we see like the 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 name for this discussion we have written as on the driver's seat. So do you really think that the car rental space has reached there, or we're still at 60%? We need maybe another 40% more or percentage points more to reach there. So overall, how do we see it by the end of this year?
I like to take this first. I think one, of course, we by no stretch of imagination we can say that pandemic has been beneficial. But if you were to look at the brighter side of this, and this is not only in the context of car rental or any specific business, a lot of efficiency has been emerging out of this situation. Businesses which were earlier spendthrift, were just talking about growth, expansion at any cost. The business models were built just with the focus of attracting investor money. Those theories have been completely re-questioned. The fundamentals are coming back. Entrepreneurs are understanding the importance of building up a sustainable business, not only financially, but also in terms of giving importance to customers, giving importance to safety, hygiene, and looking at building a resilient, sustainable business, right? That's what I like about this particular crisis. Ironically enough, a lot of businesses are actually losing lesser money at zero operation as they were losing before, because the cost of doing business itself was negative. There were negative gross revenues, there were negative margins, and on top of that, there were a huge flab of administrative expenses, salary costs, and other things, which now this pandemic has pushed entrepreneurs to correct it by itself, because no further cash is flowing in. Simultaneously, I think this pandemic has also kind of separated men from boys. Founders who have taken it by their stride, who have really turned around the business even in adversities, have still been backed by the Ps and VC community. I mean, someone asked about the crisis period around March. I very, very clearly remember first 2 weeks, there was so much of nervousness, investors skeptical. Nobody knew that when they will invest. Everybody wanted to hold with cash and all. Come April, some green shoots started happening. Some of the entrepreneurs started showing some signs of, pivoting their business model, doing something different in their own business model and all, and money started getting releasing. I mean, by June, I'm not only talking about the private investment, even if you see the public markets and all, everything is like back to almost normal. There is so much of liquidity in the market chasing too few good startups or good entities. So I think it's time where some of these pandemic situation actually help us get into shape, actually kind of help us get rid of some of the flap which was anyway unnecessary. And I would definitely be positive on the way forward, not only for car retail industry, but overall for good businesses.
All right. Fair point. Gaurav, Greg, we've just run out of time, but very quickly, where do we see by end of December?
Yeah, so as I said, we expect that we would have recovered 100%, and the fact is, and I completely agree with Mitesh. So though we were profitable even for the last consecutively for the last 2 years, such pandemic comes and it actually helps you take stock of every expense that you have, and you'll be surprised how lean and mean you can become, even though you were very very efficient begin with, and that's has been our learning. And as I mentioned, every behind every challenge there's an opportunity, and that we are finding in one ways which we expect that it will probably take us much farther than we would have been otherwise without the pandemic.
Right, right. Greg, very quickly, unit economics now becoming the word for founders, startups, and everything. What's your view, very quickly?
Yeah, no, I think certainly would echo the same sentiments here. I mean, for us, we've always had a very strong unit economic business. We've been EBITDA profitable now for the last 12 months. So yeah, I think certainly getting even leaner on some of the costs. I think that's been one of the key themes, and also kind of thinking about how to monetize even more holistically. And that's where we've launched our ZMS business, which is allowing our SaaS product to take off, which is giving even more incremental margin. So I think it's really looking at it really from a 360 standpoint, both at your top line as well as your cost structures, which flows to your bottom line. So yeah, I think definitely we're very excited here for the medium term and long term.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, attendees, for being here, and thank you, Mitesh, Gaurav, Greg, to be a part of this. It is always wonderful to
Pleasure.
speak to you guys. And to attendees, we'll see you next week again with another episode of Resilience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank
Thanks.
you.
thank you.
Bye.